the president of the university, Stephen Percy. And I'll let you get started, Stephen.
Oh, did you want to introduce our scholarship student first?
Oh, but I was late here. So do you want to do that? I don't know what.
Well, yes, we have
That's her
Ingrid
there.
Hannon here.
Ingrid. Hi, Ingrid.
And I think we were asking her to say just a couple of words about herself.
Yeah, I can just chime in. Hello, everyone. My name is Ingrid. I'm a master's in social work student, and I'm graduating in 5 weeks. So very excited for that. Thank you for the silent applause. I love it. I just want to say this is such a treat for me. I know it's really disappointing to not all be in person, but to see all of your faces really it really makes it real. These are, thank you so much. You all are the ones that are supporting me in my education, and it means a great deal to me. It really, really does. So thank you so much for this scholarship being available to those of us that are studying. And so last year, my internship was with Metropolitan Family Services, working with older adults programming. So isolated older adults, folks that have very limited means and are living alone. And this year, my internship is at OHSU in the neurology unit. So working a lot with stroke victims and their families. And so I have a real passion and interest for working with elders in our community. I feel like so often there are many people in our world that are invisibilized, and there's so much richness and wisdom that we miss out on by not paying attention to and honoring and making space for those that hold so much wisdom. So that's all that I have to say. Thank you. And it's lovely to be here. And one more little comment is just, it's so great. So often folks are just completely silent on Zoom, and it's so lovely to hear everyone chatting and saying hello to each other. It feels very lively. And so I just appreciate your group so much. So thank you for having me.
Congratulations, and thank you for being here.
Here.
So thank you, Ingrid. And now, Dawn, are we ready to go?
Yes, I'm so happy to say that we're welcoming Steve Percy back to us today. We heard from him first last September, the beginning of the first full school year in pandemic mode. But I'd like to point out that President Percy is coming up on his first full year as president, although he started serving as interim president in, I believe it was July of 2019. And you'll remember that he joined Portland State in 2012 as Dean of the College of Urban and Public Affairs. So we were happy to hear from him in September, and we are delighted to hear from him today. So Steve Percy, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, everybody. So nice to see you today. I hope you're all doing well. I don't know about you, but last September in some ways seems like it zoomed by, and in some ways it seems like a million years. So this has been quite a pressure point time for us all moving through this pandemic. But what I'd like to do is just share you some highlights of things that are happening and then answer questions. You're all friends of the family. You are in the family. You know a lot of things. So I'll make sure you get a chance to ask me anything you'd like to know, and I'll do the very best to kind of fill you in. One thing of which I'm proud of that I'd like to report on actually started as a challenge. That's been kind of what's happened in this pandemic. Right around January, early February, we noticed an alarming trend of freshman applications being down significantly compared to last year. Now, I'll put this in the context that we've been having declining enrollment for about 10 years. And part of that has to do with about 10 or 12 years ago, we had a large influx of international students, and we had an influx related to the Great Recession of 2009, 2010, and those students were in the pipeline. And eventually, of course, they graduate. So for a few years, once the pipeline grows, the whole system grows, and then as that shrinks back, it gets lower. But to think that we were, and this is what we saw, I'll tell you the truth because you're our friends, 30% down in applications for the freshman class. Sent shivers up our spine. What's happening? What's going on? Well, pretty quickly, we understood that the students that we serve, it's not hard to understand, are under such pressure from work And that maybe not sure whether they have work or they're going to stay work or how much work they have, their family, taking care of family. So many of them with children staying home, having to be home to help their children do remote learning in the home. And it just is a very challenging time. And our hunch was that many people weren't sending in an application because they're just kind of overwhelmed and weren't sure. So the staff and I want to give my credit to a lot of the staff, including our vice president of enrollment management, we got to do something. So we started a campaign called Open Fall, Open for All. Let me tell you what that means. The first thing we did is we eliminated application fee. We said, this is just a difficult time. $50, $60 for an application might be the difference if somebody applies or not. So we limited the application. We temporarily, with the agreement of the faculty senate, for a 2 or 3 year period, have reduced the expectation for the grade point average that students coming in. We believe that many high school students have had a tough year, maybe a year and a half, and their academic achievement may not be, by their GPA, may not reflect their true ability. So we've loosened the minimum kind of expectation for graduate GPA. We also reduced the expectation for minimum GPA for our 4 years free program. That's our program where after students pay what they can in financial aid, if they don't have enough to make their tuition, then we make that up by a scholarship so that there's no out-of-pocket cost related to their tuition. So that made it more available to a larger number of students. We are going to offer a $2,500 reduction if you want to live on campus and live in a dorm, a $2,500 for the year reduction in the payment to live in housing. So it'll help with the financial cost of housing for Pell eligible students. And we created a bridge program, which we've never done, but I think it's a great idea. We'll probably keep doing a summer bridge. So we'll have the students come in mid-August, and we start, of course, toward the end of September. Any freshman who wants it, we'll certainly encourage that for any students whose GPA looks like it's more of a challenge. They're going to come to campus for a month. We're going to give them courses free of charge, so they'll be earning credits, and those credits will be on refreshing skills in math and writing in a few areas like that, as well as helping them to know how to be good learners, how to be a good learner in the college level. And we'll also spend time orienting them to campus, to our programs, our services, how you get around campus, getting to know some other people, become related to our multicultural groups, if there's a group you'd like to get connected with. So that our hope is that these students who've had a very difficult year and a half in their education in high school will actually have the chance to get a fresh start, a good start. So when they come in September, they'll be really prepared to get started. We're going to be doing that, offering that to them. So we're very excited about that. So we did a lot. And I'm pleased to report to you that freshmen are now about even with last year. That's a huge comeback. And our transfer students, which have similar challenges, and they tend to enroll and apply later in the cycle, they've also bounced back up. I don't mean they bounced back up way beyond what we had last year, but they came up to at least what we had last year, which is kind of where we were planning. And so I appreciate the folks here seeing there's a problem here. We've got to respond to it. We marketed it very heavily. We got some very positive feedback. So we're looking better with enrollment. So I'm very proud of it. So I will follow on by that by saying our intention is to be back open in the fall. Now, of course, we're following all of the guidelines from the Oregon Health Authority and the governor. And I was at a meeting with other Oregon Public University presidents in Oregon, trying to figure out details of the vaccination. We're still working on that, whether we can require that or not. We sure hope everyone will take it, but there's some technical points that we're working through on whether we can require it or not. But we want to come back. We think that many students probably haven't learned as well in a remote learning environment as they might have hoped. Can you imagine a class of students, their first year in the university was all remote? Imagine what that would be like. So we're working to come open in the fall. We're going to plan some events to try to celebrate coming back. Someone told me an interesting story the other day that Ethan Sperry, who's our wonderful choir director, has actually been doing some in-person instruction in choir. They meet in rooms and they spread out in the room. And then every half hour they go to a new room so the air can recirculate. All again about safe. But he told me this story, which totally makes sense. He says, you walk down the hall and you feel like you're in a movie about the apocalypse. because everything on the wall are posters and flyers for things that are about 1.5 to 2 years old. So it looks like you're walking through the past. So not only do we want to have people come back, we'd like to get a little joy in people's lives, get them excited. So some extensive parties in the park block. Fixing up the camp. We actually kept the campus in very good shape. I don't know if you've been there, but it was very hard to keep it clean, and any broken glass, which we had a few instances, not much, I'm glad to say, but a few, we replaced that so the campus is looking in great shape. So we want the campus to be exciting to come back, as you might imagine. I'm so pleased to let you know, if you don't know, that we have completed our building on the corner of 4th and Montgomery. That's a really interesting building. It's really cool looking. It's kind of silver on the outside. It rounds, one of the corners is rounded, and it's very cool. And that's an interesting building. It's kind of a condo building, which will include our College of Education, our OHSU, PSU Joint School of Public Health, the City of Portland's Bureau of Sustainability. So the city will be one of our partners, and that's a great place to have them on campus. And the Portland Community College Dental Clinic will all be in this one building on 4th and Montgomery, which previously was a parking lot. And it's going to be named the Vanport Building. I'll let you know a little bit ahead before the formal announcement. And we want to celebrate our Vanport roots by celebrating the work that's in that building. And there will be murals and other things in that building to celebrate our heritage coming back from that. So we're very excited about coming back in the fall. We have taken precautions on campus. We have changed all of the air filters in all the buildings to a higher standard of quality or filtration. We have changed the airflow, so more external air flows in and out of the buildings. Again, for that you can see why. But just to show you that you try one thing and you learn another, we just got that airflow up and working when the forest fires hit and the smoke. And so suddenly our buildings had more smoke in them we wanted because we were taking in more air because we were trying to get fresh air. Just happened to be for a week or two there, it was pretty smoky, but we fixed all that. We've installed a variety of sneeze guards and plastic protections like you see everywhere else that provide the person, the people involved to have some physical separation to try to help safety. And we will be buying all kinds of PPE, personal protective equipment. So we want students who will have masks. I presume we're going to be in masks beyond probably the rest of this year anyway. So we want to make sure that we provide all those so people don't have, that's not a problem doing that. And we'll be planning for fall through the summer, figuring out what the guidelines about how distant it should be, how classrooms will work, whether we have to spread people out more, what that means. So we don't know all of that yet, but we've got teams of people working on it. So we're so excited to be able to come back. And I'll switch gear a little here to say, downtown needs us to come. I don't know if you've been downtown lately. It's very quiet and some parts are boarded up. It's extremely sad. I think you've probably seen it. And we've lost some restaurants. El Centro, which was in the Hotel Moderna, has closed. So sad. That was a big hangout. Raven and Rose appears to have closed.
Oh.
Some of the retail operations on our campus have closed. We lost a Starbucks. We've lost a couple of others. We're hoping Green Zebra will come back when our students come back. But sometimes we are a landlord, and we're a landlord because one, tenants help us pay the bonds on the building, but two, they help invite the community onto the campus. Part of it. So we're working on it. All of this is culminating in our 75th anniversary of Portland State University, right back from Vanport College, the different names. And so I want to celebrate that with all of you. You are a major part of that history, and we'll continue. We're going to be having more celebrations to mark that particular occasion. And it's interesting, isn't it? We were formed 75 years ago, and soon after that, we had a flood that completely knocked us out, right? And we've had other challenges, but we've always been resilient, and we're coming back, and we're going to come back strong and be strong. But you're part of that history of the 75th. I appreciate that. I have 3 priorities as president. I probably mentioned them before. Advancing racial justice and equity, tripling down on student success to make sure we take every barrier, every challenge that learners may have and make them turn that around to be successful. And we're doing some exciting work there. And the third is pivoting our long-term commitment to community engagement to help rebuild the city. So one exciting thing I wanted to tell you about, and stay tuned for more, He has started with a conversation with the chief executive officer and principal at St. Mary's Academy. As you know, they're literally right across from the urban center building where I spent my first years here. And the young women there often go out for lunch and go to our different retail operations and then go to the lobby of our building to eat their lunch. So I often walk through many St. Mary's students. I almost feel part of that. But we had an interesting conversation about, St. Mary's reached out to us and said, they're developing a whole block of property just west of their kitty corner southwest, the old post office block, and they're thinking about it. We were all wondering, with downtown and such challenge a few months ago, what all this meant. So we talked about, well, what can we do positive? And the St. Mary's folks had a great idea. So why don't we call this an education district? Why don't we take some pride in this area of the Southwest downtown and call it an education? And then Kevin Neely, our vice president of university relations, and others said, well, why don't we expand that? Why don't we call it an education and arts district? Because on the park blocks, as you know, very proximate to our camp is the Art Museum, the Symphony, the Historical Society, and other art institutions. And we all kind of share the park block. So we're coming together as a group of people, and we're going to declare an education and arts district. And one of the things we'll do is simply try to market and celebrate all the collective work that we're doing. We're all doing so much in that area, just by the events that are there. Then we thought maybe we'll get more creative and do some events together. What if the St. Mary's Choir and the PSU choir sing together? Or what if we both sing in the symphony? What if we bring the Historical Society things to campus? Or what if we do things together on the park blocks at the same time? Fundamentally, we want to bring people back downtown, give them a positive reason to come downtown. And we have a lot to celebrate and a lot of assets. So stay tuned for that. We're working out what that means, but that's one thing we're doing. Second of all, Mayor Wheeler has announced 5 what he's called tables of people looking at different areas of bringing back our community. And we're sitting at all of those tables. They have to do with infrastructure and cleanliness and vitality. And we're also working with the Portland Business Alliance and other corporate leaders. And we really, really want to be part of bringing back downtown. We are part of Portland. We are downtown. It's part of our, we want to really help bring that back and bring our resources and our knowledge, expertise to bear on that. I want to call out Tim Boyle, who has given multiple grants to Portland State, one very exciting one to the School of Business to support the career development of business students. But he's also given money multiple times for us to clean up the campus and decorate the campus. So we've had some nice plantings there, and our campus is very clean. We're celebrating our trees, of course, and doing some plantings, trying to stay very much clean and attractive looking. And another exciting initiative, working with our provost, Susan Jeffords, is bringing in a consultant to help us think about how our campus looks from the outside to inviting people inside. People say, I don't know where the campus stops and the community starts. Well, in some ways we like it that way. If knowledge serve the city, we don't want to have wrought iron gates or brick walls that separate us. But how can we make it welcoming? How can we help people find their way around more quickly? How can we organize it? So some exciting work is starting to be done on that. And Tim Boyle walked around with a consultant together, and they thought about some exciting things. So we are also, I will tell you finally that because of our declining tuition, our declining enrollment, our tuition revenue has declined as it does normally. We are now about 30% state funding, 70% tuition funding in our general education fund. We certainly like to change that around. We're working in the state legislature now, the 7 universities to raise the amount of money invested in higher education to $900 million. That would be bringing it up from about $830 million. So we're asking that. We didn't want to ask a lot. This is a tough year. But we are on a multi-year plan to create longer-term financial stability. This year, we had expected to balance our budget to have to dip into university reserves. That's not good, as you know. We have about 100 million of university reserves. We thought we might have to use up to 13. Turns out, because of our work share program, where some of our employees went on unemployment for 20% of the time and earned federal money to replace the income they lost here. And that worked out pretty well. We agreed with that with the unions. And we're not traveling now, we're not running printing machines, we're not spending a lot of money because we're remote. So we saved money. So actually we came out, we'll be able to end this fiscal year without having to use reserves. And I'm very proud of that. But still, we're trying to balance where our revenues are with our expenditures. So we're involved in reviewing some of our academic programs to see if there are reductions are appropriate. We're trying to kind of make sure that we get the long term that we're in financial health. I don't mean to tell you that we're in any dire emergency. We're not. We're in good shape. But if we want to stay in good shape, we've got to sort of make sure we get a long-term fiscal health established, and we're working very much on. We're very, very appreciative of federal funding that came about through different laws that were about federal stimulus as a result of COVID. CARES 1, 2, 3, they're called. They have other different names. But if you add three of them together, the three that have been done, higher education has done pretty well. And we've received about $100 million of federal support through the federal legislation. We don't have it all yet, but that's before. Half of it appropriately goes directly flow through to our students. So every Pell eligible student this term is receiving $500 from federal support. And people who are non-Pell eligible have a program where they can apply if they have financial support. That may not seem like a lot, $500, but when you cross thousands of students, it's quite a bit of money. And we'll be able to do that for at least another year, maybe beyond federal funds. The other funds will be used for a variety of things, largely to fill gaps and holes that became very large as a result of COVID. I never thought of it as a president, but in some ways we're a business in the sense of our parking brings in millions of dollars of revenue. If you're not having your parking goes in the hole. And that's one of our auxiliaries. Another one is our housing. Our housing was really underutilized in this period, although we kept our dorms open, but we're probably about a third of capacity. So in our rec center and our Helen Gordon Center and things that were closed, they had reserves of their own, which they used, but they had to tap those down a lot. Bringing those up was going to be a challenge, but this federal funding will help us to do some of that. We think there may be some money in there to also do some one-time initiatives to support some other things we're trying to do on campus and move forward with our mission. And we have to always remember those are one-time funds. So they can close a gap or give you a year or two of support, but you can't create long-term commitments on one-time money, or you're going to have to pay the piper one day when the federal money goes away. So that's an awful lot. I hope I haven't overwhelmed you with all that stuff. I'd be glad to give you more details, but we're alive and we're well, we're working. We have been able to manage. Who would have thought we could have keep the university going for a year and a quarter probably a year and a half now, in a totally remote environment. Was it perfect? No. Did we get better? Yes. Are we hoping to get back? Yes. But we managed to sustain people's learning and their education and movement forward despite the craziness of this time. And I only thank goodness for the modern world of Zoom and internet communications, because think about 30 years ago, what we have done, we couldn't have done. So we've been able to keep going, imperfectly, but going, but we're coming back strong. Thanks, everybody. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
I've got a question for you, Steve.
Yes.
It's Scott. First of all, great summary, and wonderful about the increase in freshman enrollment, which I think is wonderful. How about bragging about a new program that we are going to be starting that was your brainchild? And this was the emergency management and community diversity. It's a new one, and why not say something about that?
Well, I talk about that so much I worried about, because I came here in 2014, and at the time, no one said to me, by the way, Steve, while you're looking at this opportunity for a job and you're looking at living in wonderful Portland, by the way, there's a major earthquake potential. That's a really rock'em sock'em. If it ever hits, it's going to be pretty tough. Nobody mentioned that in the promotional materials for you. I'm joking a little bit, but I learned about it. And being someone who has enjoyed disaster movies, I'll admit that, Scott and others here. I got interested when the New Yorker came out in 2015 with the big one, the amazing article, which kind of shook us up, pardon the expression, about remembering the tremendous risk that we face. We don't face it for multiple hundreds of years, but when it hits, boy, it's a big one. So I was dean at the time. And I thought we ought to do something. So I looked at emergency management programs in Oregon, and I found out we had nothing at the graduate level in emergency management. And I looked around the rest of the country, and a lot of them were formed, the emergency management programs and emergency preparedness were created after 9/11. And they were very much focused on terrorism and coordinating law enforcement and other responding units. But so I thought we need to do something different here. So I immediately thought, unlike a dean usually does, this is bigger than my college. This is interdisciplinary, cuts across multiple disciplines. If you're doing this work right. So I asked my other fellow deans, hey, would it be okay if I asked if you could tell anybody who has any interest in diversity or management, emergency management, disasters, preparedness, response, the history of that, whatever. And they did. And Scott knows that because he's one of the first people that came up on the list, given his long list of interest in earthquake potential and risk and damage. And so that group met and found a commonality together. And we created a really unique, one-of-a-kind program in the country that has emergency management, but community resilience. And by community resilience, it's how we care for people, how we prepare people, how we come together during a response, how we come back better, resilient. Resilience means you don't just recreate what you had, which is a tendency. Instead, you say, when we come back, we're going to come back better. And we've launched the program this year, the first in the state, and one of the few west of the Mississippi, actually, west of the Rockies. And we're doing some very exciting work there. And so, two things: we're meeting a need in the state for an educational program we didn't have. And the other thing I would brag about is we created it without any new money. And what we did is we got existing units like Scott's and others to decide to offer courses in the core. I'll give you an example. When we had a lot of community experts on our planning team, along with Scott and many other faculty. And they said something I wouldn't have thought about. Communication is huge in the area of dealing with risk and preparedness. People have to understand the risks. They have to take it seriously. They can't be frightened off by it. They have to be updated at how do we provide that information. So I met with the chair of the Department of Communications. They were not originally involved. And I said, hey, our folks, our experts say we need this. How would your department be willing to create a risk communications course? He said, hey, that's pretty interesting. We've got a couple of people that would like it. And by the way, it should be in our curriculum anyway. So they created the course even before the meeting. So existing units use existing faculty capacity and interest to create courses. We put them together with some methods courses and some other concentration courses, but we put together that program totally interdisciplinary, totally appropriate to state need. It's a really growing career field. Can you only imagine how many corporations and companies and businesses and local government offices are going to be expanding their emergency management stuff? So we're off to a good start. Thank you, Scott, for being part of that and always encouraging it. We're delighted. So that's one new program.
I'm Larry Sawyer. I have a degree in geology. So I'm very pleased to hear all about this. I didn't know about it. But when you mentioned the building, the new building, the fourth Montgomery building being the Vanport building, I don't know if you're aware, but the display outside of 338 Smith was basically Vanport. And
Okay.
the Raps did that.
Wonderful.
And it was taken down this last year, and it's in storage. And when you said Vanport, I thought, my, that might be a great place for that exhibit.
Yeah.
So I'll just throw it out at you because the board has been wondering what to do with it. Right now it's in storage.
Do you know why we took it down?
Smith took it down, so that's all we know.
Okay.
Don or someone else may be able to fill you more in on that, but it may be working with our archivist too. But anyway, my thought immediately when I heard that was, maybe that's a spot for it if you got about 20 feet of wall.
Yeah. Well, thank you. There's a Vanport group. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of them that honors Vanport and does exhibits and things. We're working with them. But boy, I'm glad you told me about that. That's really interesting because they've been working on that, and there was designed to be space in that building.
Yeah.
And thank you for that.
When we published our booklet, our tabletop book, we took photographs out, and you probably know Brent Shower, and he was involved in that. And it's a very nice display, and it is focused on Van Porten and the shipyard.
Well, thank you for that. Let me find out where that is and see if we can put it there,
Yeah.
incorporate it there. That's great.
Don may tell you where it is. I don't know, but
Okay.
I do know it's in storage. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Great. Teresa, might we mark that down and remind you, we'll make that connection.
Yep, I do believe, hi, this is Mary. Hi, Steve. I believe they moved that out of Smith because they were creating a new student cultural resource center.
Oh,
And that display is in part in the library now with Chris Pastchild, and then looking for a new home. So Larry,
Okay.
thank you for bringing that up and calling that out. But I think the plan is to find a new home for it and properly display all those items.
Pat?
So I keep hearing little rumors about a potential change to the park blocks that is apparently part of Portland Parks and Rec, into taking down some trees and cementing over part of it and making it a bicycle hub or something. Do you know anything about that?
I just met the other day with the Downtown Neighborhood Association, and I know that they had some concerns about one of the plans that had come forward. I think it has to do with more bicycle space. To tell you the truth, I don't know much about the particulars of the plan, but I know the Downtown Neighborhood Association was concerned about removing trees. So I'm aware of no immediate action on that, and I've asked our people to pay attention to that and see what that is, see what that's about, and where we would work with that. Because we see the park block is a rich treasure that we don't want to spoil.
Do you know who we could contact to be advocating against that?
Kevin Neely, our Vice President for University Relations.
Okay.
And we can make that, I mean, I don't think we're in immediate discussions about it now, but I know that there's been some plan on the table. And the city pulled back some of that planning, I think about a year ago, and I'm not sure quite what that is. And I'm not an expert, but this is the second time I've heard about it this week, so I'm going to get to know more about that.
But it's through Portland Parks and Rec, is that right?
I'm not sure of that either, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
And I think
Okay,
it may have had to do with the green loop and what would be in the green loop or something like that, but I don't have all the details. It hasn't been major topic that we've been thinking about, so I don't know that, but I will look in.
Okay, thanks.
Alan?
President Percy, this is Tony Lineweber. I had a question for you. And you summarized on budgetary issues about earned revenues and state funding. How has the foundation fared during this time? Has fundraising held up? I'm involved with a number of nonprofits around the community, and depending on the messaging about the impacts, and we certainly have a message. I've found that people that are able have increased some of their donations in order to try and support things that are down and affected adversely. How have we been doing?
Good question. We've been doing pretty well, I think. If you'll all promise that not tell my secret, but it's not so much of a secret, but I'll tell you because you're our good friends. 3 weeks ago, PSU reached its goal in the comprehensive campaign that the foundation has been working on. 300 now, we reached the 300 million goal, and there's going to be a lot of celebration, but you're all friends, so I know probably many of you have contributed to that over the years. We did meet that. We'll surpass it, actually. So I'm not sure how we'll come out with a goal for the year, but that's a huge milestone. So you're right, Tony, there are some people that really want to, what we find is there's some people that are really motivated to give. And for some people, the pandemic has not caused them any financial worries. And so well, I can tell you there's other people we've talked to, including some bigger donors whose financial situation has become more challenging. And for those folks, there's been I think I'm going to have to step back a little bit and figure out where I am on this. People have been doing, the people we reached about, we raised about $200,000 for student emergency funds with through the foundation in a very quick, short time. Need to keep working on that. We started something on campus. I don't know whether you fall into the outreach on this, but we now have 2 days of giving focused on our campus where we get the campus units involved in working with us. It's a little bit of crowdsourcing. You may know about that, where you send out the opportunity and you're not expecting in that. You send out, you set the day, you send it through all your networks and people keep sending the message and people give, and it's little bits adding up to something. We started that about 4 years ago before I was president, and they raised about $30,000. In the last one, they raised almost $300,000 in that 1 week period. And it goes to all kinds of units. And when you go on there, you say which units. So every multicultural center could be supported. Departments were supported. Athletics were supported. And many of them met their goal. And each time we do it, it gets bigger. And it works because the people on our own campus, people like you, give to that. And they spread it to their own networks. And each time you do it, you get a little bit better at who you spread it out to. So we're very happy about that. So trying long thing, we met the campaign goal. We're still going strong, but it's been a little bit mixed. Some people really wanting to step up and others who are just trying to sort out where they're coming out.
Thank you. Appreciate the response. And just kudos to you. You are serving as a great emissary on behalf of the university and its students in the community. I hear nothing but positive feedback. And so hats off to you and keep it up. Good work.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Hi, Steve. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
You may recall that the most recent time we saw each other was at a PSU basketball game.
Yes.
And that is, in fact, apropos to this question. For a little background for you and everyone, my first year here in 1980, I saw the Neil Lomax Mouse Davis team score 105 points on the gridiron, which was incredible. I spent many years on the University Athletics Board, a number of years chairing that.
Oh.
And so with that as a backdrop, and again, when I was on the athletics board, there was always a question about the future of sports in the university. In particular, there was always a question about football. I'll give you my particular bent right now, which has significantly changed over the years. And that is that, in my view, it might be time to eliminate football and put our resources into basketball, where if we put resources, perhaps we could do as well as a Gonzaga. I know that there are a lot more pressing issues on campus right now, but have there been consideration, discussions about the future of sport at Portland State?
Absolutely, there are, and I'm glad you asked that question. When I became president, I knew a little bit as dean, but I became aware. I think we're doing some amazing things with athletics, and athletics is really not funded very strongly. In our conference called the Big Sky, where we with the other 12 other universities, we're part of that. We're the lowest funded athletic program in about every quarter. Our coaches are paid less. Everything we're on the lower end, with one exception. And thanks to Peter Stott and Walt Bowen and many other people that contributed to that, and I don't know all the names, but all of the wonderful people that contributed to it. Our Stott Center, our Viking Pavilion, is the envy of all the people in that conference. They just think, wow, you've got the state of the art. We wish we had that. What I did, Alan, was I realized this question has been sitting around and hasn't been dealt with for a long time. What's the future? Where do we go? What does it mean to us? Where does it fit to our mission? I think, as you know, universities sit in different contexts related to sport. There are athletic teams in smaller communities where that college team and that game is a big part of the community. I'll give you Cheney, Washington, Eastern Washington University. Those games are a big part of the community. And I'm sure Cheney's a wonderful place, but there's not that much else in that kind of level of activity that the community can go around. But here in Portland, we've got all these sports, maybe more coming. And so that's one thing that it's a little bit of a challenge. Second of all, I spent my career in urban universities where most of the students don't live on campus. Many of the students are working, raising families, are very busy. And so athletics is not the center point of student life as it is. For example, where there's a place that has some ducks, I think, and I don't know where that is, some duck place, but another place has got beavers or something like that. But anyway, it isn't as big as the park campus. So it's not as visible. We lost our ability to play at Providence Park when they did some renovation and some other things. And so along the short, Alan, I have created an athletics futures committee that is just beginning its work. That futures committee is headed by Linda Williams, a wonderful supporter of athletics and supporter of PSU, and a corporate leader and someone who cares about PSU. She's chairing it, working with Val Clary, our wonderful athletic director. We have members of the board of trustees. We have members of the donor community. We have members of students. We have members of faculty. We have members of the foundation and then this committee. And so Alan, Teresa, make sure that Alan and anybody else who wants to be, we're going to have community outreach sessions. And Alan, you've got a lot of background. So I think that would be very useful to have you included in that. So we've actually, and I also thought it's important to have outside expert knowledge. I find there's a lot of, in this field, a lot of people know a little, maybe not the whole thing. And a lot of people, perceptions are not based on the depth of reality that we can know. So we've hired a national firm and charged them to come give us some recommendations and look at what's happening, try to figure out what's happened in intercollegiate sports and how we might position ourselves better. And they're coming back with recommendations, but it's the Athletic Futures Committee that will then review that and look at other data and come to the president with recommendations, maybe sometime this summer. And so I think we're long overdue to look it over. I think we need to look it over. I think I have set all options on their table. I didn't go into it with any particular purpose. Just want to say that, because sometimes people think, well, you're doing that because you want to do X. That isn't true. I want us to do what's best for athletics and best for the university. So, but among the things that I'm sure will be considered is what you mentioned, and I'm sure that's one of the topics. And I was not very much involved in intercollegiate athletics until I stepped into the president role, and I sit on a president's conference with a big sky and stuff, which is areas I've not much experience in, but I have learned that the rules of being in conferences and what you have to do to be in a conference and to meet federal expectations, appropriate ones about fairness for women and men in athletics, and the ethical issues that can really be a problem if they're not followed in this, and you see it all the time. And there's a big question now about name, image, and likeness, whether the players should receive benefit from their personal benefit from their role, and that's a tricky wicket, but not as much for us because we're not as high visibility, so we don't much of that, but we have to consider that. So and I also would tell you, I think it's a bit of state of flux. I mean, there are practically no university, even the very, very biggest of them, the most successful, make money in athletics. It's not, in the end, the net is not a huge gain. Now, football might be for some, but if you look at the whole thing, it isn't. So, and the costs keep escalating. I was on a conference call with Mike Schill and the then president of OSU, and they were talking about, that we talk about the future athletics and said, we're going to have to do something about the cost. It just keeps going up and up. And what those big teams and those big sports leagues are paying for coaches is more than like twice the university president. I'm not jealous of them, but I mean, it just means that they're kind of in a whole different world, and the distinction between professional and collegiate begins to kind of wear down. So anyway, but Alan, that's a long-winded answer. Yes, it's an important thing, and we're thinking about that now. And we'll be glad to listen to your ideas and anybody else who would like.
Good, thanks, Steve. I'm glad you're looking for it. And yes, I would like to get involved, so thank you so much.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Eileen Brennan, retired social work faculty member. And I'm really glad that there's the collaboration between OHSU and PSU in the public health programs. But for a number of years, people have been talking about greater collaboration between the two universities. And I was wondering if you had anything on the back burner that would strengthen that collaboration.
Thank you for raising that question. it's a question I raised with Danny Jacobs, the president of OHSU, in a phone call about a couple of months ago. We've talked about a lot of things we might do together. And the School of Public Health is a fantastic example of that. And by the way, that program, the graduate NPH program, Master Public Health programs, are really doing well. I think finally the recognition of the advantage of that jointness is really taking off. I think that we've all been so overwhelmed. If you think of OHSU had to deal with all their medical sort of stuff at the same time we're doing just the educational stuff. But I said to him the other day, I would like to do it. And what I like to do myself is to get people in a room and feed them. I think that means a lot. And open the door to conversations about what we could do together, where we work out, where we might have some. Our foundations are working together on the OHSU is a member of the new building I mentioned. They also supported the Viking Pavilion, so they've supported us, but we're trying to figure out programmatically where we might find other ways and connections. And the beauty, I think, even though our cultures are different, our traditions are different and all that, I think we're very complementary and not competitive at all. We are one of their biggest feeders of diverse students into their medical school. PSU, actually all their students, but we also bring diversity that other feeder universities don't bring to that. I think we need to be creative and think about how we can work together to find areas where our mutual strengths make something even bigger than what we have. And what I see is great expertise and knowledge in areas like social work, for example, is a great area. There's some urban planning things I think are very relevant, and many other areas where if you can put them together, much like our emergency management, where you bring different talents together, you get something even bigger that comes out of it. So I've asked the President Jacobs to say, let's just set an event where we just all come and people throw some ideas on the table, begin to sort through them a little bit, and find the next steps of where we work together. So that's kind of where we're going right now. But I think we've we've actually consulted a little bit about campus public safety. It's been an issue on both campuses, conversations about that. And so, and we've worked together on things like the innovation quadrant and some other things where we both have common interests. But I think there's more to do there, and we're trying to set the stage to think what's the next big thing.
Thank you. That's great to hear. I think that some of us have hoped that there would be transitional programs where our undergraduates would feed into master's programs that might be joint, things like that. Because the opportunities for internships could really be made much stronger, I think. And so it's great to hear you talking.
There's, Eileen, there's one I should mention another area where I'm very pleased. We have something called Build Exito. I don't know if you're aware of it. It's a federally funded program that is designed to bring more diversity into biological bioscience and medical research into the research fields of the country, thinking those perspectives and multicultural perspectives would enrich that area and do that work. And Build Exito is our version, our name for a federal program that was designed, I think it's a National Institute of Health program, I think. And Carlos Crespo and I can't think of his name, the wonderful guy in social work is also
Tom Keller.
Tom Keller has been so wonderful and instrumental in that. And it's a program, it's really impressive. The students are in there, they'll go through, they get cohort support, they get advising support. They all do undergraduate research work. And that's where I wanted to mention OHSU, that many of those students, undergraduate students, and we're attracting students, by the way, our focal area is West Coast, Pacific Islander, Alaska, and some Pacific Rim. So we're kind of bringing in that's kind of our major focus, although we attract Hispanic and African American and others as well. But the OHSU has been a great partner for those undergraduate research experiences. And toward their senior year, they give presentations, individual presentations, the same as you would do as an academic conference. Yeah. And they've been strong or stronger than any graduate student, and even as strong as some faculty I've seen. They're amazing. They've been helped to make their presentation. They are knowledgeable about their research, and they're very impressive. Their retention rate is very high, and they're often doing some wonderful things. And so that's kind of an example of student success, supported by federal money that we can provide more service and support for those students and involve them in research. But that's another area where that shows where there's great potential.
Thanks so much.
Yes, I'm aware that there's currently a transition of leadership going on in the College of Education, and I just wondered if you had any updates that you could share with us about that.
What I would say is that Marvin Lind, who is the dean of the college, is on administrative leave right now, and others are having conversations about what's next for that position, and that's really all I can say right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I want you to know we care about the college and the great work we do, and we're working to sustain the PTP program.
Oh, good.
That went through a little bit of a hiccup. Well, that might be understating it, but
yes,
some changes. But we are committing $500,000 to support the students in that. Our financial model originally was not working very well, but I'm meeting with the president of. I met with the Portland Community College president, Mark Matsui, about PTP, and we're both very supportive. I'm meeting with he and school directors involved in it on Monday, talking about it. And so I think there was a hiatus in recruiting, and we want to move beyond that.
yeah.
And we've talked to the people that were in the original PTP program, and many of them were concerned about it and had some interest in protecting the original identity of the program and want to help us go forward, but kind of want to appreciate what they did, and maybe we call it something else, but still appreciate it, and they do that. So we want to grow that, and I'm hoping we get it. I'm sure we're going to get it back going again, and then I'd like to go out and see if we can attract some other external philanthropic support, national organizations and other, to help grow the program. Because as the president, as the director, the Portland Public Schools superintendent told me, you're producing 8 or 10, which is so great. And we love the program, but what we could use 50 or 80. There's a lot of turnover of teachers, and they love the person. So I hope we can grow the program, but I'm very much committed. It's a wonderful program.
Yeah, it's been a real flagship program and a feather in PSU's cap for what they've been doing.
Yep.
Quick question. How do we have many international students with COVID? Has the population gone down?
Oh, that's been a fascinating challenge. Our international student applications, freshman applications are up, I'm pleased to say. Some international students never went home. We kept the dorms open because some of them couldn't go home. They couldn't travel. I felt so badly for them. They really talk about being stuck. And they've continued their education. Many have stayed in Asia, but with remote learning and been able to continue that. But without going to detail, the international landscape and America's approach to international relationships has gone through a bit of a challenge. Gee, did I say that generically enough? But it has kind of diminished that, and we're hoping that's going to come back. We just signed it's got an interesting relationship with a university in China, focused a lot on engineering, but also general education. We just signed an agreement. And in that program, at the start, we actually go there to teach. We're going to do it remotely this year, or part of this year, but we actually will go there to teach along with them. And then hopefully that program will mean that they'll do 2 years there, then they'll come to Portland State to finish the second year. That really brings in new students and enrollment and it helps the university in China American universities, which are generally in high regard, are paired with a Chinese university. It helps the status of the Chinese university. And so we're working with them on a joint program, and we're very excited about it. It took a while to get the details worked out because you're doing international agreements. They're kind of tricky, but we're working on that. So I'm hopeful, Scott, that they'll grow. But I think we've seen some positive signs, but I think we'll see more in the next year or two to see whether the international situation, COVID clears, some of the sense of being able to immigrate into the country to study and other things become back on track. We'll know a little bit more.
May I ask a second one? this totally just something that I'm focused on in my retirement, and that's diversity. I'd like to know how we're progressing both in recruitment of faculty, staff, and students on a diverse basis.
The diversity, that's a great question. Thank you, Tony. That's right up with something I think about all the time because of my commitment to racial justice and equity. We are about a year or two away, if things continue and the evidence of this incoming class suggests that's in the positive direction. I expect within 2 years we'll be 50% or more students of color and plus international. So if you add the students of color international, we'll be over 50%. That we continue to be the most diverse institution of the 7 public higher education. So our students are showing, our faculty and staff is still lagging behind. And there could be many. One of the reasons is we're not hiring many people right now. Strategic hiring freeze, but we need to do more on that. But we need to get serious about that. And there are complexities in terms of the law about recruitment and other things we could go into. But that's something that I hope we can continue to add to the diversity of our faculty. I will tell you one very positive note is that we made this year, we prioritized in a difficult budget year, hiring 8 new faculty members in the School of Gender, Race. That's where our Black Studies Department is. That's where our Indigenous Peoples Track is. That's where gender studies are. And that's kind of the hub of our activity. So the provost and the dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Science award came up with and said, we're not doing much recruitment this year, but they actually we're in the process of hiring some very exciting new faculty of color in the School of Gender, Race, and Nation. And the university is thinking about, although there are some challenges to any kind of new educational requirement expectation, there's a proposal moving forward to look at creating a racial and ethnic studies requirement as part of graduation of all students. It would be based on 2 courses, one on a more domestic focus on these issues and one more international focus. We think it can be that these courses will be included part of their clusters as part of general education. We're not trying to add additional credits on requirements. We don't want to add more course requirements in terms of numbers of credits hours to graduate, but that's a pretty exciting one. And these faculty and others will help us make sure that our students have even more awareness to deep issues of racial equity and justice, decolonization, and some of the other issues around. So that one's responding through. We're doing a lot of things more generally. I should come back next time and bring with you the Vice President of Global Diversity and Inclusion, Dr. Ame Lambert. She is amazingly so insightful and so full of good ideas, leading our work on this area. And I'd love to have you meet her and talk to you about something. I'll tell you a few things we've done. I set aside a fund of $1.5 million over 3 years to support racial justice and equity, thinking that I need as president to show it means something, not just my word. So that's one start of that. We created 5 task forces looking at different elements, including the student experience, the faculty staff experience, our policies and procedures and infrastructure, where people looked at what we could do to advance racial justice and equity. They were task forces. Each of them came up with 3 ideas. We're finalizing the review of them, and we'll be launching them with money out of this racial justice and equity fund. That's just one of the things we're doing. So we're doing a lot of different things, and it's kind of emerging because there's no pathway, there's no map. Here's how you do this, right? Everybody's trying to figure it out across the country, but we've got more energy working on this than I've ever seen, and we really want to go deeper. And we're doing more training. Every member of the President's Executive Council is going through a 180-hour intercultural training led by Dr. Lambert, the Vice President of Global Diversity and Inclusion. So we're doing a lot, and deans are going through some similar sorts of training. So lots of people are getting, I hate the word training, it's kind of learning is a better word, I think. Just learning deeper about ourselves and how we work and how we think and how our processes work, how our procedures and how our, so many things that we have done for what we thought were good reasons, but the good reasons also tended to marginalize people unintentionally. I'll give you an example. And this was another university, but a department was giving all of its paid internships to seniors were given to the seniors with the highest GPA. And that was done on the basis of merit, right? And how much of our work is about merit? If you perform well with good grades, then we reward you for that. We recognize that. That's it's kind of a merit principle, pretty deep in the way we approach a lot of things. But then if you think that some of the people with high GPAs are there because of the advantages they've had in life, and other people would otherwise be there in that position, except for the lack of opportunities that they may have. And so unintentionally, you may be continuing to marginalize certain groups of people because we did that particular way of the way we thought about this challenge. And boy, when your eyes open on something like that, you begin to think, gee, we could do that. There's other ways to do that. Or you could do some merit and some other things, or you could look at it different ways, or it just makes you think, wow, we could do this in another way that would still benefit students and recognize achievement, but also give opportunity to others. So that's the kind of thing we need to be thinking about there. It's just an example of nobody meant it that way. We thought we were doing it for the right reason, but when you think about it, well, gee, it may not have had the impact we wanted in terms of giving the same opportunity.
Well, thank you very much, President Percy. You've given us more time than we had expected, and we are very grateful for that. A wonderful presentation and a really terrific Q&A session. So thank you.
My pleasure to do that. And let's think about if you begin, I'll just offer if you're interested to come back next time and let's talk about racial justice, equity, inclusion, and some of the work we're doing. It's pretty exciting. It's very formative. We're rolling it out. We won't get it all right, but at least we're trying and doing a lot of things. I'd love to share some.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I hope I haven't overruled everything else you want to do your time in the meeting, but I enjoy talking to you so much. It's just a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you. So Steve, would you like me to give a preview of what's happening next for RAPS?
That would be great, Dawn. Let's hear what it is.
Okay, well, our next meeting next May is actually going to be about the Vanport Place Marking Project, which is an effort started about 5 years ago to have Vanport be designated an historic, give it historic designation, create permanent signage and an interpretive center. And this is actually a program that we were going to do a year ago in May. And of course, COVID put a stop to that, but in a way it's fortuitous because now this presentation is coinciding with Portland State's 75th anniversary and also the opening of the Vanport building, which is going to give more attention, I think, to the history of Vanport and this project. Our two presenters next month are Mary Helen Kincaid, who is the executive director of the project, and Tanya Lynn March, who is the project director. So that's going to be on May 21st, next month at our regular meeting time. Our last event of the programming year is our picnic in August, which sadly didn't happen last year, but it is going to happen this year. And I want to give you a heads up about our first program for the upcoming program year starting in September. We usually meet off campus or have a meeting that doesn't happen in a classroom because of beginning of term scheduling. Last September, we were planning to have a guided tour of the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art and the Massey building on campus, formerly Neuberger Hall, and for those old timers before that, South Park Hall. But the Museum of Art, the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art, is expected to be open in September. And we are making arrangements for a guided walking tour. And the exhibit that's going to be on display is the work of Louise Bourgeois, a French-American artist who was born in 1911 and died in 2010 at the age of 99. She's known for her large-scale sculpture and installation art, but she was also a prolific painter and printmaker. So I think it's going to be a really interesting exhibit and a really great introduction to this museum on our campus. So that's going to happen on Friday, September 10th, on a Friday, so that parking will be a little bit easier for our members. And we have wonderful things planned for the rest of the programming year too, but you'll just have to come back to our next meeting and find out what those are.
Well, thank you, Dawn. And I want to thank everybody for attending. I think we had a high water mark in terms of attendance for this particular meeting. And I hope everybody stays safe. And we're certainly looking forward to meeting in person when the guidelines from the government and the state CDC and our own caution allow us to do that. So thanks very much, and we'll see you in a month, I guess, roughly.